First, I want to welcome everybody to our M.O.B meet. We call it the M.O.B meetup. The M.O.B stands for the Masters of Business. For those who will watch this video in the replay and they're like, well, what is this M.O.B thing? Is this some illegal stuff or is this some gangster stuff? No, it's M.O.B stands for the Masters of Business. And of course, we network and we mastermind, and it's community oriented. And so one of the things that we wanted to do as a group is start bringing the type of intense dialogue and conversations that we have within the M.O.B, subject matter that really, for me, I liken life and business. To me, it's one and the same, right? I know a lot of people have their views and they just separate them, right? You know, I got my personal life and then I got my business life and things like that. But when you really study the root of business, you begin to understand that it's really activity. Every day there's business happening, there's busyness happening. So there's someone selling something, someone buying something. Right now we're in an activity of business. Zoom, everybody else is participating. So it's really life and business are one and the same. And I was taught long ago, if you learn to master the science of life, you can master the science of business, and vice versa. If you begin to master the science of business, you begin to master the science of life. And I found that there isn't a greater exercise for personal growth and development better than entrepreneurship and business. If you want to grow as a human being and in all of the different facets of improvement, whether it's emotional, mental, spiritual, and even physical, all of these things that you have to kind of implement to make yourself successful as a person who's engaged in industry or commerce, as an entrepreneur or business owner, is the exact same thing that you do in life. And so for the life of me, for the past 15, 20 years, I've always found it kind of interesting when people kind of, they work very hard to separate the two. And then they wonder why there's so much imbalance and incongruity in their lives and their business. And so I've been on a mission for the past, I guess you would say 18 years. Let's see, that's about 18 years to kind of, see what God has blessed me with, to see if I can weave the thread that everybody that I touch begin to kind of have some of these types of views or these thoughts, as we like to say, Anitra, thinking about your thinking, right? Thinking about the way that we approach life and business and strike these balances. And even before we started, Roy even mentioned it and I mentioned it, we're talking about these freedoms. And so that's what the Masters of Business means. And we want to engage further in these types of conversations on topics that I believe the liberation topic, we don't have as many people today as we had on the first one. And it could be because I did change the day. I think the last one was on a Tuesday. I think Tuesday is a day that people like better than Wednesdays. But, I said, we'll test these different days and see which one resonates with everyone. And then we'll kind of settle in on 1 or 2 days per month to kind of just bring this type of subject matter and get everybody engaged and see if we can help each other network and help each other to overcome any of the trials, obstacles, and difficulties that we may be facing surrounding all of these topics. And so for me, as we've been refreshing the M.O.B, the term that really began to resonate, Soroya, you mentioned before we started, freedom. And we had been talking about freedom and how, I guess, maybe sometimes it hadn't been hitting the nerve the way that it used to. I think 15, 20, 25 years ago, when you said freedom, people was like, oh yeah, that's what I'm after. That's exactly what I'm after. But in the marketing world, right, everybody's talking about freedom. So the more it's been used, it kind of loses its emotional thrust to kind of get people to take action on what is it that I need to do to be freed in, right? I want freedom. I want all of this time and money and all of these different things, but nothing really strikes the nerve to kind of move towards that. And so as I was playing around with it, I said, I love the term freedom, but I've always used the term liberation. And liberation always had this emotional pull to it. One, because it was always used in an activist, from an activist type of a perspective. And so with that said, when you talk about liberation as it relates to Black people becoming free and being equality in society, that tended to have an emotional pull on people. But I've always used it just in life, period. As I've said, for me, life and business is one and the same. And so I said, you know what, I like that better. And then of course I talked to you, Anitra, and Njadika and others in the mob, and and everyone tended to have a different but a very emotional response to reading and hearing the word liberation. And so then we talked about it in our first, what does it mean to you? And of course, in the mob, we're working towards total liberation, not just liberation physically, like the Emancipation Proclamation. I think we even had a graphic up of one person. I got another graphic coming, Anitra. The first one was just the hands, right? The liberation of the hands, the chains breaking free from the hands. But this next graphic is breaking free from the chains around your head. So the mental dynamic, which I think we all talked about last week in our conversation, the mindset that's necessary for not just liberation, but total liberation. And for me, when I think about that, that moves into what I'm beginning to start talking about, Nitra, and I don't have it trademarked yet. So I better, since I'm getting ready to mention it, but here's the thing I've learned. Once you mention it, this is all time sensitive. So if someone comes after and say, well, no, I created it. I heard Brother Bedford's video and he didn't have it trademarked or copywritten and all of that type of stuff. Yeah, you're probably right. So legally, you can probably say that you did it and then we can have a legal tussle. But I'm immediately getting ready to start on it. But this liberation, this total liberation, this liberation mindset, to me, leads to what I like to call a liberated lifestyle. Right. And that's what you were talking about, Soroya, right? You said if you can't exercise some time freedom, you have to begin to ask yourself, are you truly liberated? So there are 4 aspects of this. And then I'm going to throw the ball to you all. And I know, Soroya, I know you, hopefully you're stable and not driving too much, because I really want to get your thoughts on this. So I'll lay the base for the conversation and then we can go ahead and dive in. And of course, if anybody joins later, they'll just have to kind of, chime in, or we'll kind of bring them up to speed later. But there's 4 aspects to this liberated lifestyle that I believe is of paramount importance if we're going to move forward as entrepreneurs and for each of us to be successful. And that first one, Soroya came out the gate and she said it is absolutely the #1 thing above everything. And I think we should have a further discussion on what time really means. I think the more we study that, a lot of us will find some interesting things as it relates to time. And it's not just the way that we punch in a clock, the 9 to 5, and all of these things sprung from another thought process of how to calculate or measure time. But if you just naturally think about it, you want to do whatever it is that you want to do with your time. You want to enjoy your time. And so Soroya hit the nail on the head. The #1 aspect of this liberated lifestyle, or having a liberated mindset, is time freedom. Being in complete control of your time to be able to do what you want, do what you love, and do it in a way that doesn't cause you angst. If you're spending time, like for instance, if you're spending time here with me, you shouldn't feel a tremendous amount of anxiety that you're missing out on something else, that FOMO, fear of missing out. You have to have control of that. And I think we said that last week, that, and as a matter of fact, it was actually on the 4th of July when we did that, right? And so I think, I forget the gentleman's name again. He's like, so to be able to launch a Zoom on the 4th of July, that's a time freedom, Brother Bedford. He said that you have a luxury, that you have, that you're not worried about anything, that you can do something like that. So the first aspect of this liberated mindset or this liberated lifestyle is time freedom, being able to do what you love when you want to do it. The second one is, of course, now it's money. Most people have it backwards, right? It's, people say money is time. No, it's not. No, it's not. And that's the money is not time. You want to use money to buy back your time, because once you're done with your time, you can't get that back. You can always get money, but you can't get your time back. So the number two aspect of this liberated mindset or this liberated lifestyle is money freedom, or we like to call it cash confidence sometimes, right? Being so confident in your abilities to generate cash or money that you can create or innovate or create and add value at will. That's a whole part of this mind, and I'm dropping this because I want us to begin to think about, do we have that type of capacity to where we're creating and adding value that leads to cash confidence, that we're not concerned about certain ways to make money. Uh-oh. It looked like I froze up. Am I okay, Anitra? It looked like I froze up. I'm okay. Okay, I froze up for a second. Okay. So that's the number two aspect of this liberated lifestyle, of this mindset, this liberation mindset. First is time freedom. Second is having control or mastery or freedom over your money to be able to make money how you want to do it. I think that is critically important. There's just too many of us making less money doing things that we hate, when there's a tremendous opportunity to make more money doing things that you love, that you're gifted at, that you're talented in. That's the core, that's the cornerstone of the mob, is that everybody that comes through, I want my job is to keep pointing out, discover who and what you are, and build your life and career around that, around your gifts, your unique gifts, talents, strengths, and you'll have a more fruitful and fulfilling life. And so that's the second aspect of it, is money. The third is relationships. It's having the freedom to be and connect with and work with who you want to. I'm just a firm believer. I've never been one to try to be in places where I'm not wanted. I don't beg to get into rooms. It's never been me. And some people say, well, you gotta, pay to play and all of that type of, it's never resonated with me. And it only takes one, maybe two times for someone to really kind of do something that lets me know that I'm not welcome, where I just kind of disappear and say, oh, thank you. It was nice knowing you. Since you don't want me, I don't want that relationship either. So that's the third aspect, is to be able to have control and mastery over the relationships. Dr. Cammie's coming in again. Okay. And then the fourth one, which is really is purpose. Being able to live on purpose, doing what you love, doing what you know you should be doing. I think Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, he even just messaged me this the other day. And it's something that he says all the time about, when those two questions that you must ask yourself, who are you? And then why are you here, right? Are you doing what you're supposed to? So he always kind of, talks to me about, Brother Bedford, are you doing what you're supposed to do, what God put you here to do? And then sometimes he gives me these hand claps, because he knows that this is this is what I want to, this is my purpose. So I'm able to do this 24/7 if I wanted to, because there's nothing I enjoy more than the connecting with my people and helping us and seeing the light bulbs come on and helping us with strategies, business, all of the things we talk about, getting time, money, relationships, getting on purpose, helping other people get on purpose. There's nothing more fulfilling for me. So those are the four aspects to kind of lay the foundation from my perspective on what I believe this liberation mindset entails. And Dr. Cammie, you weren't on. And I said that because the mindset to me leads to what I call this liberated lifestyle. So if we want a liberated lifestyle, these are the four dynamics or these four aspects that we must pay attention to: time, money, relationships, and then of course, purpose, right? So number 3 was relationship. All right. So with that said, I want to hear your thoughts, right? This is a conversation, but I kind of wanted to, say what I thought from the very beginning on what this means to me. Okay. So Anitra, I tell you, let's go to you, Anitra, because I don't want you to, hopefully your throat is better right now. But tell me, what are your thoughts on, and first, your thoughts on this whole concept of liberation mindset leading to the lifestyle that I'm talking about. But then what are you doing? Kind of give us one thing that you're doing to kind of live this liberation mindset or to move yourself towards a liberated lifestyle.
Okay, so my voice is better, but it's funny you asked the question because I have two aspects of the liberation. So when I was in corporate America, I didn't understand what liberation was until I liberated myself. And the way I did that was understanding my value and worthiness in the workplace, right? And understanding that I was an asset and not a liability to the company, because a lot of companies, they fire you at will. But I knew that what I brought to the table was a lot of knowledge and experience. And so once I understood that part, I understood that even if they let me go, I could take my knowledge and my experience somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So that allowed me to not feel as though I was beholden to them. And that's what happens sometimes when you're not liberated. You feel beholden to the money that the job brings in to pay your bills, to live your life and things like that. And so once I realized that, I could go into a meeting and be like, I'm good. If you let me go today, I'm good, because I had somebody tell me I was expendable. I was like, maybe to you, but I could go somewhere else and they'd be happy to have me. So I wasn't so beholden to the job and the money and all of that. And that was a different sense of liberation. But I had to get the mindset part of understanding that I was an asset to them. So once I got through that part, and it took some time. So it's not something that like happened overnight, but I realized in the different games that are played in corporate America and in different places that you start to understand where you fit in. Mm-hmm. Once I figured that part out, I was like, oh, that's how we doing stuff. Listen, I know how to do that too. I'm gonna use your rules to help me be better where I'm going. So but it's a mindset. Again, it's one of the things that you have to think through. And so it transfers on to being an entrepreneur and learning the part about being liberated from just the business aspect and understanding how you help others and serve them, and knowing that you're worthy of what you want and wanting what you want. And so one of the ways I do is I think about my thinking, and I think about whatever the scenario. So I'm always like, I'm not was it cup half full? I'm like, what's the worst case scenario versus the best case scenario?
You think that comes from your military training, thinking like that?
It does. I'm like, the worst case scenario that you could do. And because I was telling somebody recently, I was like, the worst they can tell you is no.
Right.
If they say no, then what would you do? So there's always okay, the worst case scenario is they could tell me no. Will this stop me from moving forward? Nope, it won't stop me. I can ask, they say no, and I do something different. I just pivot or change the direction I'm going. Mm-hmm. And so I always think through different scenarios with the worst case scenario versus the best case scenario. And that's how I do it. But it's a practice, something you learn and you have to train yourself to do. It's not just off the cuff. Kind of have to work yourself through it, because there's points where I think even with liberation, it happens in levels and in stages depending on where you're at.
Mhm.
in life and in business. Sometimes you can say, I want to be financially liberated. And then you're like, but I created all this debt. I can't be financially liberated today
Yeah.
because I have things I have to take care of. And so, but you can get to that place because you can plan how you're going to get there.
You bring up an interesting thing too. I got a question for you, but you bring up an interesting point because one of the things that I heard a while ago is that debt is slavery. So when you just bring up debt, it's like, so think about that. If you're feeling like you're liberated and you're working towards something, but if you have a tremendous amount of debt, do you really feel liberated? Right? If you got to deal with that. So that's an interesting point that you brought up. We got to dig a little deeper into that debt as an entrepreneur too, because I've seen a lot of people pushing for people to kind of take out all of these loans, and it gives the appearance that your business is doing well. But as you just said, it looks good on the surface, but underneath, if you stop working or if you stop bringing in a certain level of income, that'll collapse on you. So then you got to ask yourself the question, are you truly liberated? But the question I wanted to ask you, because I asked, what is the one thing or the first thing that you're doing? And I just want to get clarity from you on it. You said the first thing, you didn't say it was the first thing, but you mentioned it twice. Once you begin to move towards liberation, the thing that kind of helped you to move towards that was understanding your worth. Right. So was that the first? How did you begin to understand your worth? Did you look at the results you were producing, or did you take an assessment of yourself and say, and I'm worth this? Or you looked at, the value it's providing to the company or whatever? How did you come to that understanding moving forward?
Well, a couple of ways. One, I looked at my results. So, and then I got a lot of accolades. And those were, again, because of the results that I was getting for other people, not necessarily myself, but because I served other people. And there were some aspects where I helped other people get extra bonus money. That was embedded in my job. And so once I mastered that, because you do have to master certain aspects of it. So once I mastered and understood, okay, if I do this, this, and this person gets an extra $20,000. So now they're coming back like, hey, how can we do that again next year? And then, but through all of that, if you, I have a picture out here, but you can see all the ribbons and the medals, and it's just full. But it was because of the way that I was as a person. And through the experiences, it helped me understand my worth and value. And I was just like, this is great. But then let somebody tell you you're expendable, like I could fire you tomorrow.
Yeah.
You'd be like, hold on, I went to school, I got this degree, I got this, I got that, I got this. Okay, so you ain't the only company out here that needs somebody that has my skills.
Yeah, that's good. Let me ask you this: when they said that, clearly, well, it didn't work towards you, but I know a lot of people, if someone tells them that, it kind of deflates them. When they said that, did that deter you from moving forward, or you just kind of already had that resolve that I know my worth?
It didn't deter me. And the thing is, it was one of us. So when it's one of us that tells you that, you're like, what? You let that come out your mouth? Especially if it's somebody that you've served. It was somebody I served, and I got them to where they were at. And I was like, how dare you?
Right.
How dare you?
That sounded like it motivated you then.
I was like, man, please. And it did, because there was a point where they took my job away from, they took the position I was sitting in away. And when they did that, I really had to go back and evaluate my value, because they didn't value me.
Wow. And
while they were playing the game, I was over here. I had a whole other set of steps I was taking. But one of the things they said, well, we'll pay you to go to school, so when you lose the job, you'll have some assets. I was like, okay, pay me to go to school. I was out there getting everything that they would give me, that they would pay for, with the same intent and knowledge that I'm going to take that somewhere else.
Nice.
And so it was a motivation. It didn't make me be like, okay, oh my God, oh my. It was a true motivation. Like, first of all, you look like me. I was expecting, when I was helping you, that you would reciprocate, but you let me know that's not going to happen. I'm good. I'm good.
This is good. This is interesting. So I put that down. So we got to put that in the notes. Understanding your worth is a key component to this. So Roya kind of fell off. So Njadika, let's go with you first, and then we'll come to Soroya once we know that she's able to speak. Njadika, can you speak?
Yes, Brother Bedford.
Okay, so the first, so same question to you first. What is this? You heard my understanding of my concept of this liberated mindset, or this mindset of liberation and this liberated lifestyle. So I want to hear your thoughts on that, but then also want you to kind of, like we just asked Anitra, what is, as you come to your understanding of that, what is the one thing, it's probably many, but just give us one thing that you've done that you would advise people to kind of try as they move towards their liberation or their liberated lifestyle.
I guess for me, it goes back to one of the major principles of collective and cooperatively working together. And that's a big problem when you start talking about liberation, because if you look at history per se, it was a collective process, was a cooperative process. And that goes back to the number one core of mindset. And I'm going to take it another step further as it relates to, we are in trauma. We are mentally in trauma. And until we start talking about trauma and how to relieve trauma, that's a way of developing the mindset approach. And I would say, when I look at, my growth and development, it came through learning from others, being involved in programs, being involved with people that were sharing information and learning how to put that information together in order to free myself. And that's the basis, but it came from being involved in a collective, cooperative group of like-minded people striving for the same thing. And until we can get to that point, which goes back to what Anitra was talking about, that self-esteem, finding out who you are, it's not going to happen until we face the trauma. And the trauma deals with all of our hurt and pain, which leads to the foundation of us not being able to trust. And until we get trust in our lives, in our minds, in our spirits, liberation is going to be extremely hard and it's going to be extremely difficult. And so it's an illness. I mean, we're all traumatized and we don't want to face our traumas. And that's a real deep area.
Right. It is. It is. Let me ask you this though, because that's kind of macro. It's funny that you mentioned the collective and the cooperative. That's why we kind of like doing what we're doing. That's why we use the term network. You kind of try to find new ways to kind of introduce, in particular, introduce to our people, as you just mentioned, the solution. The only way to kind of get through that, there's this collective or cooperative or this networking that has to take place in order for you to kind of do that. So you kind of mentioned, I don't know if that was your one thing that happened with you. You said that that's the way that you started learning, by being a part of and learning from others. So I don't know if you would say that that's your one thing, but just to kind of ask the question kind of directly, because you kind of spoke in a macro way. So if I was to ask you this on a microscopic level, just saying personally, for your liberated lifestyle, what would you say is the one thing that you're doing or have done to kind of help you to understand what you just kind of said to us?
One word: discipline. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to have discipline. No matter what you're involved in, you've got to be focused and disciplined. And that's a real hard task in order to be about, if you want change only comes through being disciplined and focused in your actions. And I've had the opportunity to be involved with some organizations that placed a serious discipline in my life that I have followed to this day in terms of moving forward. And with that comes patience. And so that's why, like, I guess, the universe has put me in a situation where I don't get stressed out about anything because everything happens like it's supposed to, when it's supposed to, because life is a learning process. Each and every day we get a new lesson to learn. And it's about lessons.
This is good. This is good. This is good. Discipline and focus, and how hard that is in a world that is full of distractions.
Yes.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Understanding your worth and being disciplined and focused. Soroya, can you talk?
Yeah, I did over so.
Uh-oh.
How about that? So thank you. Can you hear me?
You're going in and out.
Can you?
So it's not a great connection right now. So I tell you what, we'll come back to you probably if you're in a better spot.
Okay.
So let's go to Dr.
Right.
Cami. Same questions to you, Dr. Cami. You've heard my thoughts. You've heard Anitra's and you've heard Njadika's on this liberation mindset. But moving towards this liberated lifestyle, what is the one thing that you've done? And it's funny, when she mentioned discipline, you popped up in my head, Dr. Cami, because I know how disciplined you have to be to do what you do with all of the languages and different things like that. It was funny because I'm sitting here listening to her, but then you popped in my head when she said the words discipline. So to those 2 points, what is your I want to hear your thinking on just this liberation mindset and liberated lifestyle. But then I want you to tell us, what is the one thing that you do or have done that you would advise other people to do if they want that type of lifestyle?
I think for me, the first thing is keeping it as a noun instead of a past tense verb. So the liberation, as opposed to being liberated, because liberated, we convince ourselves that there's no more work to do, and it's a journey.
Nice.
So being able to think about what is this lifestyle towards, what are the acts that you're doing for your own liberation each and every day, as opposed to I'm liberated, I've arrived, and now I'm done. Because I think it's going to always change as you level up, as you upgrade, as you whatever it is, as life happens, the liberation is going to look different each time. So considering that, I think is one thing. One thing I've done towards this liberation lifestyle is self-awareness. And that takes some time by yourself, and not necessarily doing all the things, but really thinking about who I am, and do people see who I believe I am? And if for whatever reason there's a disconnect, where do I need to heal in order to make sure that I'm able to show up fully everywhere and not have these situational masks? If you're living if you're living a lifestyle of liberation, there are ways in which the authenticity is the constant, as opposed to the actions that are associated with it, if that makes any sense. So like making sure that who I say I am is who everybody says I am, and not just the folk that like me. So that means that, if I'm working with organizations, they're all going to say the same thing, and just making sure that those things are constant everywhere that I go, so that I know that when I'm showing up as me fully and completely, and don't feel the need to hide any aspects of me, if that makes any sense. Yeah, so that self-awareness piece, because it also helps to make sure that, even to what Njadika was saying, if you're not aware of your opportunities, where's the discipline going to come from? Where's the patience going to come from? If you don't know yourself enough, you're not going to be able to do those things. You'll start off great, but you're going to fall off eventually, because you're not aware of what your opportunities are, because you haven't taken that time with yourself.
This is good. This is good. So self-aware. So we got understanding your worth, being disciplined and focused, self-awareness. These are all foundational or the essential work. I like the essential self-work that needs to be done if you want to have a liberated lifestyle, which, as you pointed out so beautifully, thank you for that, Dr. Cami, that it's a constant thing, right? We put the ED on it, but there's no period there. It is constant improvement. So this is good, man. I definitely want to come back and get a final thought from everyone on this. But Soroya, are you able to talk now? I see you. Have you started driving again? Got my heart over here racing. Oh, you're just not in a good spot. You're not in a good spot.
Okay.
And I want to hear you. So we'll come back to her. So let me ask you, because you use another word in there too, and it really aligned with what Njadika said. And it's something that we talk about. Like I said, we're bringing conversation we've talked about inside the mob, and of course we want to present it to the outer community. And most people don't like to talk about, especially when you start talking about entrepreneurship and business. Start using terms like healing. For some people, that is so incongruent, right? They don't think what that got to do with business. I just need some money. It has right. So it has everything. And so for you to use that terminology, and then of course for Njadika to use the terminology about trauma, because I do believe, these are just these unseen, unacknowledged roadblocks that's preventing us from doing, all of this business that we want to entertain. We can't because of these things. So you use the term healing. I just want to get your take on that, because one, you weren't on last week to kind of give your full take on just the difference between independence and liberation. I know I read what you said in the group, but I want you to kind of expound on that, but also expound on why healing is necessary for that.
So that I pulled that straight from my Rites of Passage group, because one of our principles is forgiveness. And how we define forgiveness is one's ability to accept one's own failings, to accept the failings of others, and to seek healing when those failings produce hurt. And a lot of times with forgiveness, we forget about ourselves. And when we don't forget ourselves, it makes us stuck, because we're not healing those places effectively in order to make sure that we can move on. We've hurt ourselves, we've sabotaged ourselves, we've done all these different things. We've developed these behaviors around the trauma that Njadika was talking about, but we don't take the time to forgive ourselves around it in order to make sure that the healing is present so that we can move on. And forgiveness is one of those principles that is just difficult for folks to be able to do, because we don't want to forget, which means that we're not healed. We want to change the nature of how we move through the world because of that one forgiveness issue that we have with that one person, or that one situation, or that one event, or that one bad client. And if we don't heal those spaces, then it's going to be difficult for us to keep moving on, because we're going to always bring that baggage with us. And it's okay to bring some bags, but other stuff we got to let go.
All right. It's so powerful that you say that, because think about this, Anitra, and then I'm getting ready to come to you, Njadika, because I want you to expound, because what she's speaking about, it's connected directly to the trauma that you're talking about. But think about this, Anitra, we're always talking about using your past to transform your future, right? So you kind of alluded to that, Dr. Cami, right? So you're right. Some of us we hate the past so much, or whatever that is, that hurt that we can't let go. But that is the actual, we need that material to create a better future. And so you use the perfect word. And it's funny, we all say the same thing, but in different ways. You said it from the rites of passage, because if we don't look at our past and learn how to use that material, and I forget how you used it, but you used the terminology that is the exact same that I use, you remain stuck, right? So we're always constantly in this state of being stuck and not knowing where to go, but we're afraid to use the material, that past, those hurts, those challenges, those difficulties, and transform that to have a better, brighter, bigger future. So And Janika, what's your thoughts on this? Because I think that somehow it's synonymous with trauma, right? Uh-oh.
Dr. Cammie stated it perfectly, defining what trauma is. It's about living in yesterday. And what you just said, yesterday is about teaching you lessons in preparation in preparing you for today, in preparation for tomorrow. If we stay stuck in what went down yesterday, it's like, because you all are so young, it's like the cassette tapes and all of that.
Wait a minute, I remember the cassette tapes. We ain't
I had
that
cassette tapes, had to use the pencil and everything to rewind it back when it got stuck.
You get some seasoned people on this call.
But when you talk about it, it's like a cassette tape in your mind.
Right.
Keep replaying it and replaying and replaying. And if you replay it, what do? You stay stuck living it.
Yeah.
The media does not help, because what happens? Every day, the same old 24/7 ingrained in your mind so you don't move. That's the reality. And the thing that I liked about what Dr. Cammie said was about going through the what you say,
Rites of passage.
rites of passage. All of us need to have a rites of passage experience. I don't care what it is. Everybody needs that, because that's the key to releasing trauma. In terms of, because you've got to come face to face with what you are stuck with that you can't let go of and you keep holding on to. Because what does that do? That puts you in the victim mindset. As long as you stay a victim, you will always be stuck.
Yeah. This is good stuff, man. Yeah, so many thoughts are coming to my head, but I want to stay on point. I'm gonna stay on message, Dr. Cammie, so we won't get off. So it looks like you called in from the phone, Soroya. So I'm gonna come back to you, Soroya. Hopefully that's clear for you. But let me get your thoughts on kind of what was just shared, Anitra, on the healing, the trauma, the past. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so when Dr. Cammie said the healing and the self-awareness,
Yeah.
the very first thing that came to me is some of us are self-aware, but we still wear what I call a mask, because we've conditioned ourselves to show people what we want them to see versus what is really going on, right? Because internally, we don't share everything with everybody. Heck, we don't share everything with ourselves, not for real. Think about it. And so there's levels to what I call unmasking. You have to unmask those things. And that's part of your self-awareness, is peeling back the layers of the mask to get back, or to get to that true you, to get to, again, the liberation. And there is trauma that happens. You can go back, we've talked about this before, back to that little girl or that little boy. At some point, there was some trauma. You might not have identified it as trauma back then, because it was part of you growing up. Latchkey kids, part of you growing up, being home alone, not trusting people when you go to the door. There's just so many things. And as a people, we have to unpack it, but it's an individual unpacking and unmasking of those situations. And then going back. And so I reflect on some of the things, some of the trauma. I've had therapy, go to therapy, get it out. Again, sometimes talking about it helps, because as you become self-aware and you start unpacking and unmasking those things, then you can start to see the trends in your actions throughout your life and through what you're doing in your business.
Yeah.
And it makes such a big difference.
This is good, man. We started this, so the topic of this was developing the liberation mindset, and now to have these three things, and Soroya, I'm anxious to hear what you have to share. So you can kind of, and I think being on the phone probably would help too, because that when you're out, you don't have to worry about the web connection as much. So Soraya, what's your thoughts? Same questions to you, but I don't know if you've heard everything that was shared after that, but same questions to you. What is your thoughts or your thinking on this mindset liberation or this liberated lifestyle that we've been talking about? But then, give us, what have you done or what are you doing that kind of help you to move towards having a liberation mindset?
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for the question. Is this a little better for you?
Oh man,
Can you hear me?
that's crystal clear.
All right, there we go. So first of all, we started off, my input was all about freedom. And when Anitra was talking, it's like, oh my God, we have such a similar story. And that's where I want to land in that 9 to 5. That 9 to 5 is what propelled me to look deep, to understand my worth, and to understand, I'm in Indianapolis, and Eli Lilly is one of the top companies here in the city, pharma companies.
Mhm.
And I always say that they trained me how to be dangerous. And I say that to say I was an IT project manager black belt. And I said, if I can do this, and at this level for this company, oh my God, what could I do for myself? So
Wow.
I'm a late bloomer in that I never had aspirations as a young woman to have a business. But because of how that corporate America, what I gleaned from that, that's what helped me to jump. And truly, I said that, when you do self-reflection and you do all of these assessments and things like that, I know I'm a night person. My day doesn't begin to 10 o'clock. It's like, but yet I worked a 4 10-hour day. So again, Monday through Thursday in the office at 6:30. It's like, well, God, what am I doing here at 6:30 in the morning at somebody's desk when I haven't even really woke up? So when we talk about that, and the second part of what you talked about from the health or being true to yourself standpoint, it's like that to me was faking it till I made it. So people, say that now in the wrong perspective. Every day I walked into that corporation, fantastic corporation. First of all, I'm not downing it at all. It's a very good company, but that was faking it till I made it.
Mm.
And I could feel that on Sunday evening. I was like, oh my God, I got to get ready for Monday. It was that kind of trauma that I faced. And when you hear to your own self be true, to your own self be true. And that's what propelled me. I had a conversation with my husband at the time, and I said, whenever they come through our department for an early out, I'm raising my hand. And sure enough, I did. I, again, was in a telecom department. And when they came through, I was the first one to raise my hand. That was back in 2010. And I've been free ever since then. I stepped out and started my own. And freedom was that. It was like, working for the company, you go on vacation, you got your laptop at the beach, and you come back or whatever, and you got all these emails. It's like, wait a minute, did you punish me for leaving? Those kind of things are
Right.
what made me jump. I'm like, enough of that. So that is my story on how, when I quit, I called in well. How about that? I didn't call in sick. I called in well. I'm out of here. I look back to say that is what propelled me to do better. And at the time, my mantra was failure is not an option. That's what propelled me, because I knew I had to hustle. And I did. I started a transportation company, non-emergency. And I worked day and night. I did a 16-hour day, every day, networking, you name it. But I would, as you hear, you'd rather do 80 hours in your own company than 40 in someone else's. So that was what kicked me off then. At this stage, 15 years later, my mantra is regret is not an option. Regret. I don't want to look back and say, I wish I could have, would have, should have. That's what gets me up every day. When she talked about being disciplined, heck yeah, you got to be disciplined. Nobody's standing over you to report, hey, what'd you do today? Da, 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 da. If you want it, you got to go get it. Investing in yourself, even the opportunities that you have here for networking, for mastermind. How important is that? You have to be in that circle. I have, I guess, an issue when you say relationships. I know relationships are key. I know your net worth is your net worth and all of that. But I'm cautious on some of the things, as if when you walk in the room, you kind of expect issues. I guess I used to be a very trusting person, but because that has been grayed in a lot of ways, I kind of guard myself in so many ways there. So trust is a factor. It is a factor. Some of those things, can you change? Well, you can only change the way you see them. How about that? So I don't come in disappointed in that regard. So, and furthermore into that, when we talk about the generations of how things have changed, I'd like for all of us, if we have children, if we have grandchildren, how can we be a blessing to them on that? And I say that to say, most of the young people now, again, jobs are an issue. Hey, I don't want to go into a 9-to-5, or, I want to do my own thing and things like that. How can we support these young people coming in to understand liberation at an early age? And I say that to say, I challenge each of you. When was the first time that you heard a wealth conversation in your family dinner table? How are you having a wealth conversation at your table now? I know when I grew up, again, I'm 60s baby. So when I grew up, I didn't hear about wealth. Like, well, you know what I'm saying? So how are we changing that narrative now for the ones that are in our circle, in our family? For instance, I've only got one grandson. He's 14 years old. Again, all kids have their phone. They're all into electronics and things like that. So last year I bought my grandson a domain name. You've got your domain name. Now you've got his own podcast. So he will not remember the tennis shoes that grandma bought him. But guess what? He's going to remember this that helped to free him, to help liberate him at an early age. So I challenge you all to see how you can be a blessing into your kids and your grandkids' life, to give them something that really matters.
That's nice.
And I'll land with that.
Was it his name? Is the domain name his name?
His name is Karan, Kahron. You can find him on YouTube, Karan's Corner. He has a podcast where he talks about cars. He's very, very, very into cars, and he can tell you anything about anything on cars. So Karan's Corner on YouTube.
Nice. So let me ask you this, because I'm loving this theme, because everyone has given us so far the one thing that I know you mentioned it was kind of, you were just ready to go, but if you were to kind of give us the one thing that you've done that you would advise for someone to, and again, from their personal liberation, your own personal, what did you do? Or what was the thing that helped you to develop the mindset?
For me, it's to be an encourager. So you have to encourage yourself, and as well as others. So encourager is who I am. That's who I am. It doesn't matter what I do. I've got several businesses, but bottom line, who am I? I am an encourager. Again, Martin Luther King said, if you're a street sweeper, sweep it to the best of your ability. So it doesn't matter what I'm doing as far as a career or making money. Who are you? Who you be? I am an encourager.
That is so profound. One of the things that we do in the group, and I don't know if, and I'm trying to remember if encourager is in the themes of the Strengths Finder. We encourage everybody to kind of do an assessment with either Strengths Finder, actually we say Strengths Finder and M.O.B, the M.O.B index, to kind of get a picture of who you are, because that kind of helps you to move forward, and to kind of hear you use that distinct language of, you didn't even use the language of, what you do. You said, here's who I be, right? I even like that. I love the Ebonics twist on it. This is who I be. You're an encourager. And a lot of us don't really know who we are, that thing that makes us tick beyond a skill or something that we practice over a long, protracted period of time. But your identity is who you are. So for you to say that, and you said, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, you encourage people. This is good. This is good. So I got understanding your worth, being disciplined and focused, self-awareness, and being an encourager as a part of developing a liberation mindset. So this is good. And I know we're getting a little over time. I kind of picked longer time. I said it to kind of give us some room just in case there was some questions. But what I want to do, I definitely don't want to take up all of your day, but I do want to get your big takeaway. What's your final thoughts on this? And what we'll do, we'll go back the way that we started. So Soroya, if you can, you've heard everything. I got your words here. I kind of want to put this in a transcript because you all said some profound things that I want to read back to myself. So I think I am going to do that. What would be your biggest takeaway from this conversation, Soroya?
We're on a continuum, as she spoke about we're not liberated. It's an ongoing action. Again, as we hear this information, it's information applied. So faith without work, again, information without action.
This is good. This is good. What about you, Angie Digger? What would be your big takeaway from this conversation that we've had today?
My big takeaway, I will say, is being able to take the time to get into ourselves and focus on what's needed as we can help each other learn how to forgive and release.
Nice. Nice. Dr. Kami, what would you say is your big takeaway? And then I'll also, if there's anyone has any questions about anything, we'll save that last, a final question or two if someone has a question. But Dr. Kami, what is your takeaway for the day?
I think my takeaway is just assessing what of these things am I already doing and how well am I doing them? So where are those places where I'm understanding my worth? Do I need to tweak anything? Where are those places where I might need to be more aware of how I'm showing up for things? Where might I need to work on my discipline and my focus? Where might I need to be more of an encourager for folks? So really looking at the things that we just kind of touched on as what we're all doing towards this liberation lifestyle and making it so that I am intentional about where I am at each of those places.
You're a good, I just love the way you multitask. I mean, you are just awesome. I mean, you hit all of the bullet points while doing hair. I mean, this is awesome. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Kami. Anitra, what is your takeaway?
Dr. Kami's gonna steal all the thunder, right? You just gonna take all of them, all of the essential self-work? Really? No. My ultimate takeaway is, again, a lot of what Dr. Kami said, but taking of the 4 aspects, what is the essential work that you need to do to get your time freedom? What essential work do you need to do for the money freedom, for the relationships, for understanding and knowing your purpose and living on your purpose? Each 4 of those aspects individually have some essential work, some essential self-work that you need to do. What is that? Writing it down so you can come back and look at it. Because some of them may be intertwined, but then some of them may have a different aspect just built within. So,
man, that's good. And I love the way that you just said because it is self. We kind of ask that question because we can, in these types of conversations, be more general, talking about the collective, but the collective doesn't happen without the individual work that each of us needs to do. So thank you so much for that, Anitra. Any questions before we sign off? Does anybody have any questions about what was shared today? Anything for me? And then I'll let you get back to your busy lives. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you have any actionable items that a person could take for the 4 aspects of a liberated lifestyle or liberation? Any suggestion you could give of an action that they could start taking?
Wow. Well, you all mentioned some powerful ones, and it's interesting that you said that the reason I want to have these conversations so that we can hear from the community at large to kind of get the bullet points and the language of the actionable steps. You know, we have some things within the mob that I believe contribute to this mindset. In fact, that's the whole framework. That's why in order to achieve this liberation mindset or this liberation lifestyle, you know, we have some things about the pathway to growth, right? We talked about that, the pathway to confidence. But the main thing, I would say the first step, I think we've all kind of touched on it in different ways. You know, we're constantly talking about discovering your unique talents, skills, strengths, and abilities and going through those assessments. I think it's funny when you're in a room where people kind of do that naturally, right? You know, we've all done that naturally, but I think Njideka said earlier, sometimes you can take that for granted. That's the benefit of being in groups like this, because you've already put in the work, or there's some levels of work that we've put in to kind of even be attracted to conversations like this. But it's always worth repeating that those who will see this video who haven't put in the work, the first thing that I say, the first step is you got to get into a process that's going to allow you to do exactly what Dr. Camille and Soraya said. Know who you are. How do you begin that process so that you can begin to move forward in this mindset? Because it doesn't start, I think, again, Anitra, you said it in a different way about what happened when you were in the corporate space and in the military. All of us have touched on, there's that moment where you start looking at your worth, and that all starts with who and what you are and what you bring to the table. So that would be the first thing. And then, of course, we got some other tools in the mod that we're bringing forward. But I want to, so excuse me for using this language, I'm going to steal from what we've been sharing in here and use that as the framework to kind of build something out as well, Anitra. So great question. Does that answer? Does that answer?
That answered it in a roundabout way, but you know, I think if people were inside the mob,
Yeah.
they could get that one. There's one activity that you give us in the very beginning that you share. Maybe you can share that next time.
Yeah, we'll share that next time.
Or come on in. Look, come on in the room, the other room.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's one of the things we've been having these type of conversations, and this is only the second meeting of having the mob meet up outside of our private meetings, and because we want to have these discussions, and there's so many thinking tools, so many knowledgeable people, as we see right here. I mean, there's just been, if anybody watches this video and listens to what Soraya said, and Njideka said, Dr. Camille has said, and what you've said about your process for building your mindset and what propelled you to start your company and do what it is that you do. I mean, this is so valuable. And that's why I don't never want to gloss over these things, because the nuggets are here already, but people are always looking for more, right? What's next? You know, I just skim over everything that Dr. Camille just shared, of these years of experience that she's just shared. We don't want to do that. And so I think if someone studies these words that were shared today, it'll be extremely helpful, because you all have given some powerful jewels. And of course, like you said, this is the type of conversation. If there's one thing that I can say about being in the mob, it's really the conversation, the masterminding dynamic that sparks, right? There has to be something that sparks these thoughts, these conversations, this collective thinking. And most of us are not in environments to do that. So that's why I always recommend this as a business model or an add-on to whatever it is that you're doing. If you really want to get to the root of things and get your clients, your members, whatever it is that you call them, customers, to kind of engage more and always be innovative and fresh and new, this is the type of setting to do it in. So I agree with you, Anitra. I could just simply do an advertisement for being in the mob, but that's what we do. As we do. So thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Brother Bedford, let me just Roy again. I just want to chime in one more time on that. When we talked about purpose, and maybe that's the thing to get down to the core, because unless you've had a life experience or a coach to challenge you on who you are. When I say who you be, of course, is a form of I am. You hear people say, I am, I am, I am, I'm this, I am that I am. Well, I be. Who you be? Who are you? Forget what you do. Not once have I said what I did. It doesn't matter. Who are you at the core of who you are? And when you find out that and that purpose, oh my God, every day is worth the effort, is worth the living.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the part that's missing in so many conversations. Forget what you do.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah. That's beautiful. No, thank you for that. And life changes when you get to that question, right?
Amen.
Man, it just changed.
You know who you are. Yeah, nobody can shake you. Yeah, you know the core of what you are and what you do, and your what you do becomes more fruitful on fire. When we talked about time, it's like, you hear my time is worth more than money. First of all, I got more years behind me than I do ahead of me, and my life is on fire to change. Yeah, exactly.
I love that. I love that. Your life should be on fire. And it's funny, most people have they have the opposite thinking or the feeling, right? Is that, you start reaching our age or certain benchmarks. It's like, okay, well, it's tailing off now. It's coming to the conclusion, and there's nothing that could be further from. That's why I love these conversations, because we all create. And we have these conversations spark a bigger, better, brighter future, right? It's something to continue to lean into and move forward. So thank you so much, Soroya, for all of the value that you've brought to today's conversation. Thank you all, Njadika, Dr. Cami, Anitra. This has been great. I'll send you all the replay. So as soon as I download it, but I got to get this transcribed, because I got to read through these words that were shared today. This was good. So any final questions or thought that anybody wants to add before we sign off? This has been good. Be safe out there. Soroya, I know you're out there behind the wheel, so be safe out there. And Njadika, be safe. And Dr. Cami.
I do want to say one thing, because I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, and you said it too, when people need to study what's being said as opposed to trying to find the bullet points.
Yeah.
Part of self-awareness is understanding whether or not you are that person that is only looking for the quick fix, or that really wants to make the true transformation.
Yeah.
So you might want to ask yourself that while you're watching this video, whoever that might be, so that you can get what you're supposed to get out of it and maybe make some tweaks.
Yeah. And it's so funny, because our conversations are always so pregnant. So thank you for that, because really that's what all this is about. It's about transformation and taking the time to kind of absorb what's being shared. So thank you for that, Dr. Cami. You all have a great day. This has been real good for me. Can't wait to do some follow-up with all of you. I'm looking at the screen right here. I'm sure I'll see some of you, if not all of you, in office hours tomorrow, and we can recap some of the stuff that was shared in Thomas's group, because you got me excited about that, Anitra. So you all enjoy the rest of your day. Anitra, get well, get that throat well. We need you talking, and I'll talk to you all soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.